Have you ever noticed someone who's always online, but never posts their own photos? No selfies, no birthday pictures, no look at me moments. And yet they're there, watching, liking, observing. So the question is, why? In a world where sharing your face feels almost mandatory, choosing not to post photos is a powerful psychological signal. And no, it doesn't automatically mean insecurity, fear, or low confidence. In fact, for many people, it means the opposite. Psychologists say that photo sharing isn't just about memories, it's about identity performance. When someone posts a photo, they're often asking a quiet question: do you see me the way I want to be seen? But people who don't post their photos, they've often already answered that question internally. These individuals tend to separate who they are from how they are perceived. Their sense of self is less dependent on external validation. They don't feel the need to constantly update the world on their appearance, mood, or milestones, because their identity feels stable without applause. Another key trait: privacy awareness. They understand that once an image is shared, it no longer belongs only to them. It becomes data, content, a permanent digital footprint. For some, this awareness comes from experience, seeing photos misused, judged, or taken out of context. For others, it's instinctive. They simply feel more comfortable keeping certain parts of their life unobserved. And here's the surprising part. Research shows that people who avoid posting selfies often spend more time reflecting on themselves, not less. They just do it privately. They don't need likes to confirm existence. They don't confuse attention with connection. So when you see someone who never posts their photo, don't assume they're hiding. They might just be choosing depth over display. And this is only the surface. Because in the next part, we'll explore how control, autonomy, and emotional intelligence play a major role in this behavior. What if not posting your photo isn't about fear, but about control? One of the strongest psychological traits found in people who avoid posting personal photos is a deep need for autonomy. They don't like feeling shaped by algorithms, trends, or audience expectations. When someone posts regularly, they slowly adapt, consciously or not, to what gets the most engagement. Angles change, smiles become curated, moments become staged. But people who don't post their photos often resist this shift. They want their real life to remain untouched by performance pressure. This creates a strong emotional boundary between living and displaying. Psychologically, this is linked to internal locus of control, the belief that your life is guided by your own choices, not external reactions. These individuals feel uncomfortable handing that control to strangers, even digitally. Another important factor is emotional self-regulation. Posting photos exposes you to unpredictable feedback: praise, silence, comparison, criticism. Some people thrive on that stimulation. Others recognize that it destabilizes their mood. So instead of gambling their emotional state on engagement metrics, they opt out. This isn't weakness. It's emotional intelligence. They know their triggers. They know how comparison can quietly erode self-esteem. And they protect their mental space proactively. There's also a strong boundary around identity ownership. These people prefer being known through conversation, consistency, and character, not snapshots. They don't want others to form opinions based on a frozen moment that doesn't represent their full complexity. In many cases, they believe intimacy should be earned, not broadcasted. Access to their face, their moments, their vulnerabilities, that's reserved for people who are actually present in their lives. And here's something most people miss. These individuals are often excellent observers. They notice patterns. They read social dynamics. They understand how perception works, which is exactly why they're careful with it. In the next part, we'll dive into a common myth, that people who don't post photos are insecure, and why psychology says that assumption is often completely wrong. Let's address the biggest assumption right now. If someone doesn't post photos, they must be insecure. Psychology says not so fast. Insecurity and privacy can look similar on the surface, but they come from very different places internally. Insecure individuals usually want validation but fear rejection. They hesitate, overthink, and seek reassurance. But many people who don't post photos don't seek validation at all. They've already detached their self-worth from public approval. In fact, studies on self-esteem show that individuals with stable self-concepts feel less urge to constantly reaffirm their identity through appearance-based feedback. They don't need reminders that they look acceptable. They already know who they are. There's also a distinction between confidence and visibility. Social media has blurred these lines, making it seem like being seen equals being secure. But true confidence often shows up as comfort with invisibility. These people are okay not being noticed. They don't feel erased when they're not acknowledged. And that's a psychological strength. Another reason insecurity is a poor explanation. Many of these individuals are confident in real-world settings, socially capable, expressive, and assertive. They simply don't translate that confidence into digital exhibition. They prefer presence over projection. They also tend to value authentic self-expression. If they feel a platform forces them to simplify themselves into a polished image, they disengage. Why present a filtered version when it doesn't feel honest? There's also resistance to comparison culture. They understand that social media feeds are highlight reels, and they don't want to subconsciously measure their life against someone else's best angles. So instead of participating and then mentally detoxing, they skip the cycle altogether. And that's not insecurity, that's discernment. In the next part, we'll explore how past experiences, trust, and observation shape this behavior, and why some people become digitally silent by design. Sometimes, silence online isn't personality, it's memory. Many people who avoid posting their photos weren't always this way. Something taught them caution. It could be a past experience of being judged, mocked, or misunderstood. A photo shared casually that later became a source of discomfort. A reminder that once something is public, control is gone. Psychologically, this creates learned boundaries. Instead of withdrawing completely from social media, they adapt intelligently. They stay connected, but selectively invisible. Trust plays a major role here. These individuals often have high standards for who gets access to them. They don't assume goodwill. They understand that not everyone watching has good intentions. So they observe before revealing. And observation is their strength. They're usually highly aware of social behavior patterns. Who overshares, who performs, who seeks attention, who seeks validation. They learn quietly. This makes them excellent judges of character offline. They also tend to value depth over frequency in relationships. Instead of many shallow interactions, they invest in a few meaningful ones, where presence matters more than posts. Another factor is identity preservation. They don't want their past versions frozen online. They understand people evolve, and they don't want old images misrepresenting who they've become. So they let time erase moments naturally, instead of archiving them forever. This doesn't mean they lack memories. It means they keep them personal. In many cases, these individuals feel more alive when moments are lived fully, without the mental interruption of documenting them. No angles, no captions, no performance, just experience. And finally, in the last part, we'll talk about what this behavior reveals about future-oriented thinking and mental resilience, and why these people may be better prepared for a noisy digital world. In a world where attention is currency, choosing silence is a form of wealth. People who don't post their photos often possess something rare: psychological independence. They aren't pulled by trends. They aren't shaken by algorithmic approval. They aren't constantly adjusting themselves to be more likable. This gives them long-term mental resilience. They experience less comparison anxiety, fewer identity fluctuations, and more emotional consistency. Their mood isn't tied to engagement. Their worth isn't tied to visibility. They also tend to be future-oriented thinkers. They ask questions like, how will this age? Will I regret this being public? Does this add value or just noise? And when the answer feels unclear, they choose restraint. This mindset is becoming increasingly valuable as digital fatigue grows. While others burn out from constant sharing, these individuals remain grounded. Their energy is conserved. Their focus is protected. They still connect, but intentionally. They still express, but selectively. And perhaps most importantly, they understand that the most meaningful parts of life rarely need witnesses. Not everything sacred needs an audience. Not everything joyful needs proof. So the next time you notice someone who never posts their photo, don't assume absence. Assume intention. They're not behind. They're not hiding. They're simply choosing a quieter, more controlled way of existing in a loud world. And that choice, psychologically, says more than any selfie ever could. If this video made you reflect even a little, then it did its job. If you enjoy content that goes deeper than the surface, explores human behavior, and questions the patterns we rarely notice, subscribe to the channel. And if this resonated with you, like the video. It helps more people who think like you find it. We'll be back with more psychology, more insight, and more quiet truths.